Hey gang, your old pal Clay here, Mountain Music Exchange. Sit tight, strap in. We're gonna have a lot to unpack talking about Gibson Humbucker pickups. Okay, so before I get started, for any of the uninitiated out there, the Gibson Humbucker started in around 1957. Seth Lover and Gibson wanted to make a pickup that eliminated the 60 cycle hum of the P90 and can also be found on other single coil pickups. They worked together to create a pickup design with an extra, like a slug coil, that would ultimately get rid of the hum that you would find in amps, especially once you turn the volume up. Anybody that's played any single coil without any sort of noise reduction knows what I'm talking about, especially again at high volume. So ultimately their creation became what is essentially considered as the holy grail of humbucker pickups and maybe pickups in general, the PAF, which stands for Patent Applied For. So there's a lot of other videos with this sort of history you can check out. I'm still going to give you a little bit more of a rundown. The PAF ran until about 1962. The patent was actually obtained before that, but they wanted to use up all the existing stickers for the pickups, or they didn't want to give away the patent. Up until 62 is when you can still turn over a pickup out of the back of an original guitar and still see Patent Applied For on the back. After that, you get what's called the patent number pickups. With the patent number pickups, it's essentially still the same pickup design. And throughout this entire history, by the way, people sort of associate an original PAF with being an Alnico 2 magnet, you know, mid-high 7 output, that sort of thing. It's not always the case. Some PAFs were Alnico 5 as well. You can see in some PAF reproductions from other companies that they will make some with an Alnico 5. Even Gibson acknowledges this same thing with some of the pickups that we'll be talking about later on. Then from there, you get pickups throughout the decades. You get things like the T-top, you get the Tarback, you get the Bill Lawrence, you get the Tim Shaw, which is a really coveted humbucker. You also get sort of into that modern era, especially in the late 70s and the 80s with like the Dirty Fingers, 490, 498, 500. And some of those are still offered today. We'll talk about the ones that are still on offer. To tighten this video up, we're gonna stick to what's on offer from Gibson right now as a separate aftermarket pickup. Really, the range of pickups over the years and decades, and even in production guitars now, is so ranged and so varied. I think we need to try and tighten it up just a little bit, or else I may bore you to death. First up, there are several different collections of pickups that are offered from Gibson. You can check that out on Gibson's website. You can also check out Gibson Pickups on mountainmusicexchange.com. Those pickups include the original collection, the modern collection, the historic collection, the artist collection, and the Kramer collection. Now, I'm probably going to leave Kramer out of this just for the sake of keeping this video as tidy as possible. And also, I'm going to incorporate the artist collection into probably something closer to the original collection, just because right now it's only one set of pickups. It's only one variety on offer, although they have done other artist collaboration pickups in the past. So without further ado, gang, let's get to the meat and potatoes. All right, first up, we're going to talk about the original collection. The original collection includes pickups that, you know, you sort of associate with Gibson over the past few decades especially, or that harken back to original pickup designs from Gibson, specifically catered sort of in that vein of like the Alnico 2 style, PAF style pickups, right? So that would include things like the 57 Classics, Burstbuckers, and that sort of thing. So I'll go into a little bit in depth of what each of those pickups are, what they mean, how they're different from one another, and what that might mean for you as a guitar player. The 57 Classic is sort of almost the original blueprint design of the original Seth Lover humbucker, right? Even winds, mathematically, it is the closest to that original PAF design on paper, right? So with the 57 Classic, it's been in a lot of guitars throughout the years from Gibson. It was in early custom shop models. You could also probably find that for a good couple of decades in the traditional models from Gibson, as well as other guitar special editions, things of that nature. There are SGs that have them. I had an SG with a vibrola that I thought was cool that had those pickups in it. Sounded great. And you can find these in special edition Les Paul Studios. There are versions of Explorers, Flying V's that have 57 Classics, for example. But for the most part, you're going to find these in sort of traditional Les Pauls more often than not. Now, there are varying degrees of this same one single pickup, right? So For example, you can get the 57 Classic, which is, again, just a blueprint copy of Seth Lover's original pickup design for the PAF. And you can also get an underwound version, which is sort of an answer to some other pickup companies' underwound PAF models, for example. So this is going to give you a slightly lower wind. You're still going to get that same Alnico 2 magnet. So it's going to add a little more clarity to your sound. Now, as you go down in the winds, it may not accept higher gain as well. Your harmonics may be different. It depends on what you're looking for. So if you're playing loud, heavy, hard, fast, you know, rock, metal, anything like that, not sure that the 57 Classic will be your desired pickup, although I have seen it done and it does do it well enough. And you can also get the 57 Classic Plus. Now, with the 57 Classic Plus, it is an overwound version of the same blueprint design pickup, Alnico 2 magnet, but it's got some extra wind, so it's got a little extra bite, a little more top end, runs in probably just the low 8K ohms range, something like that. So if you want to use that in conjunction with an underwound 57 or a standard 57, it would make a great bridge pickup with one of those as your neck pickup. Be a good balance. There are also several versions of these that are not currently on offer from Gibson, are still noteworthy, and they're pretty cool. There's also the Super 57, which is a 4-conductor version of the 57 Classic, which will allow you to use it with push-pull pots, so you can split coils, coil tap, whatever you prefer on that. And beyond the 57, it's probably where it gets a little bit more confusing. Now, before I go on here too, just want to remind you, you can always get these pickups on offer from Gibson in varying degrees of visual designs. So you can get, you know, what most people would consider the standard sort of humbucker pickup with the nickel or chrome plated cover. You can also get it with a gold cover. You can also get double black bobbins. You can also get zebra coil bobbins, and that applies to most of the pickups, if not all of the pickups that are on offer here. And again, we're specifically keeping this to humbuckers just to try and tighten everything up here. But moving forward, let's talk about the Gibson Burstbuckers. Now, if the 57 Classic is the absolute mathematical blueprint design of the PAF, the Burstbucker is sort of more along the lines of what a production PAF would have been made like. For example, at the old Gibson factory in Kalamazoo, especially with the old Lisona winders, things they were using at the time, those were sort of started and stopped by hand. So oftentimes a pickup winder would have a pickup wound until it, quote, looked full, which sometimes meant you had uneven winds, right? Which sounds on paper like not necessarily a good thing, but with the uneven winds, you get sort of a little bit of extra depth or bite in the sound. I'm not sure exactly how to describe it. It's a little more 3D. Is 3D the right term? Maybe, maybe not. I don't know. Let me know in the comments section what you guys think. And so the Burstbucker pickups are designed to recreate the uneven winds on the bobbins that a production line employee would have made in Gibson in Kalamazoo. Again, more akin to what the actual PAF pickup that you would have received in a guitar at the time sounds like, as opposed to the blueprint or the math that says it should sound like this, right? And the reason that I say it's the most confusing is there are so many Burstbucker pickups that are on offer. There's the Burstbucker 1, the Burstbucker 2, the Burstbucker 3, the Burstbucker Pro, and the 60s Burstbucker. So let's break those down. The 1, 2, and 3 pickups are all Alnico 2 magnet pickups. So they're still sort of to the right spec that most people associate with the PAF. With the Burstbucker 1 and 2, I would say the 1 is the most sort of underwound. It would be, I guess, the closest to the underwound version. 2 is a little bit more probably even wound, and when I say even, I just mean like as far as output and spec to, again, what most people associate with a PAF style pickup. And the 3 is wound a little higher. So think of it sort of along the lines of the 57 underwound, 57 standard, and 57 plus, but in that Burstbucker configuration as far as the wind and the construction goes there. Now there's also the Burstbucker Pro, which changes the game entirely. With the Burstbucker Pro, that's an Alnico 5 magnet, and it is wound up a little more. So with the Burstbucker Pro, you're gonna probably be looking at about an 8.5-ish K ohms output on that. Some guitars that you can find with the Burstbucker 1 and 2, especially right now, are the Gibson 50s standard Les Pauls. Those are equipped with the Burstbucker 1 and 2. They are very balanced together. They give a very, very old school PAF vibe in their sound, and they just work well with that configuration of guitar. 2 and 3 could be found in a lot of guitars that Gibson previously made. I know there were some standards that they made, perhaps even some later traditionals. Epiphone used those pickups in the 61 SG, and they also used those pickups in the outgoing 59 Les Paul from Epiphone with that Kalamazoo headstock. They've since switched over to Custombuckers, which we'll talk about in a minute. The Burstbucker Pros could be found for years, especially in the mid to late 2000s, probably all the way up to very, very recently, probably up to early 2019 in the Gibson Les Paul standards. You could also find, again, special editions of probably every make and model guitar at some point had Burstbucker Pros in it. For example, you could probably get a Flying V or an Explorer or an SG, you know, that was maybe an exclusive model to a certain dealer or something like that that had those pickups in it. Those are really, I think they're well balanced pickups. I think that they work best. They're good all-round pickups because you can get clean with them and stay pretty clean without any compression or breakup if you don't want that. But especially when you're on the bridge, you add a lot of overdrive or a lot of gain to them. They hold up well. The harmonics are really good, especially if you like pinching. You can do that sort of thing with those, and I think they sound really well doing that. And finally, there's the 60s Burstbucker, which we haven't really talked about in detail yet. We just sort of mentioned it. The 60s Burstbucker, as far as guitars that are currently in production, those can be found in the 60s Les Paul standard. Those can also be found in the 61 SG reissues. That's every model, including the stop bar, the vibrola, and the sideways tailpiece. Those pickups utilize an Alnico 5 magnet as well. However, they're geared a little bit more toward the sort of higher range, so you can get a little bit more bite, a little bit more high end out of them. And you know, with the right amp and the right guitar, if you have an amp that has a lot of low end, you want to use extra gain on your guitar, that works really well. And it also accentuates, you know, the frequencies that you would sort of want to be a little more out front, as opposed to getting swallowed up by the bass or the bass drum, something like that, right? And finally, on this collection, we're going to talk about, with the original collection pickups, probably going to just go ahead and lump Greeny in there with those as well. I realize they're part of the Artist series, being that that's an official, like, sort of Kirk Hammett pickup from Gibson that's on offer right now. But again, it's the only one, so I'm going to lump them in with the original collection because it still has that sort of PAF design to it. The only big difference being is that the polarity is reversed in the neck pickup, and when you see a set of Greeny Buckers, you can immediately tell, as your adjustable pole pieces are at the bottom part of the pickup as it goes closer toward the bridge than it does the neck. But again, still that PAF sound from the neck pickup and the bridge pickup, but it's that middle position that's that sweet spot that sort of gives you that almost Strat vibe. You know, that sort of in-between pickups vibe that you can't really get. And that's where the magic really is in the Greeny Buckers. Now, that's not a very Metallica specific pickup for an artist like Kirk Hammett, but again, the history of Greeny goes all the way back, you know, a couple of different generations now of artists, specifically with Peter Green and then on to Gary Moore, and then of course now to Kirk Hammett. Also available from Gibson is the T-Top pickup. I might have mentioned T-Top earlier, but this is sort of a recreation of that style pickup. That's typically found in like your 70s era Gibsons, mid to late. With those pickups, that's an Alnico 5 magnet. It's still vintage voiced, so it's not a really super high output, but the Alnico 5 does accentuate the highs. You're gonna find that one in, the T-Top was originally introduced in the CME spec SGs. If I'm wrong on that, by the way, let me know in the comments below. But to the best of my knowledge, they were originally introduced in the CME spec SGs about 5, 6, 7, it's been a little bit, it's been a few years now. But anyway, Those can actually be found also in a current production guitar in the current Gibson USA 335 series. Those feature the T-type, and I think that's kind of a perfect blend because that pickup accentuates the highs when you've got this sort of big-bodied guitar, semi-hollow with two very hollow areas. There's a depth to it, and I think it balances really well. And since these pickups are mentioned in both the modern collection and in the original collection, if you look on Gibson's website, for example, I'll just go ahead and talk about them sort of as a transition into the modern collection. But we'll talk about the 70s tribute humbuckers as well as the Dirty Fingers humbuckers. The Dirty Fingers pickups were originally introduced in the late 70s. They could be characterized, easily spotted. If you look, they have double rows of adjustable pole pieces on those. So if you see that, the more modern ones actually say Dirty Fingers on them, but if you're looking at a vintage guitar especially, look for that double row of adjustable pole pieces. That will be your dead giveaway for a Dirty Fingers pickup. Those are ceramic magnet, high output pickups, sort of in that 15 plus range K ohms, and that is a monster pickup. If you are into hard rock, heavy metal, playing the good stuff, that one will definitely get you there very easily. Nice alternative, by the way, to like an active pickup if you don't want a level of output that's going to basically crush your cleans. It's a nice little balance. You can still clean up Dirty Fingers pretty good, but they hit the high gain stuff extremely well. They love it when you add gain to them. They seem to distribute more frequencies. You can hear the bass get tightened up. You can hear the mids better. The highs are accentuated well with a high gain pickup like the Dirty Fingers. And this one is also sort of lumped in both collections, so I'll just talk about it with it. The 70s tribute pickup. I think this is a very similar pickup. This is an Alnico 5 pickup, but it is extremely high output. It's sort of still in that 15-ish range, and is a nice balance. You can clean it up pretty good, and it's a nice high output, high gain pickup. You can find those in, of course, the 70s Tribute Explorers and the 70s Tribute Flying V's as well. So with that transition, that leads us into sort of the modern collection. Now, when we say modern in this sense, it's not necessarily that they've sort of invented a new pickup recently, although I'm sure they are working on that. Gibson has done a ton to expand their pickup line. They've always offered pickups, you know, through a line for quite a few years now, but for the most part, they've been focused on as a replacement part or something to that effect, not necessarily as a pickup focused division. Whereas they're sort of doing that now. You can see the packaging is way more focused to marketing, and their collection is growing, and they offer pretty much anything that you can want in a humbucker guitar in every configuration that you could ask for it in, like we spoke about earlier with like the double black bobbin, zebra, gold, chrome, nickel, etc. Right? Okay, so with that, I think the perfect pickup set to talk about with the modern collection are the Gibson 490R and 498T. I really like this pickup set. A lot of people have varying opinions on this particular pickup set, but I've had a lot of guitars over the years with these pickups, and they've never failed to sound the way that I've wanted them to sound. So with this one, the 490R, typically a rhythm or neck pickup, is an Alnico 2 magnet. It doesn't necessarily have that PAF sound. It's voiced with a little bit more of a mid scoop, which again is akin to a modern sort of pickup design or for more modern style music. And the 498T is an Alnico 5 relatively high output, mid 14s pickup that I think will do modern high gain stuff very well, but it's voiced in a way that cleans up pretty good, even though it's sort of also got a bit of a mid scoop as opposed to these sort of mid-range humps that a lot of PAF style pickups have, right? It doesn't necessarily, I don't think, sound brittle or dirty on clean, so you can clean it up pretty good, and that pickup takes high gain extremely well. That pickup is on offer in a lot of current Gibson guitars that go all the way back to the very late 80s, early 90s and beyond. Your very late 80s all the way through the 90s, Gibson Les Paul Standards had the 490, 498T. The Les Paul Studio from about that same time frame all the way up until now offer the 490, 498T. And SG Standards from about that same period, late 80s all the way up until probably the late 2010s, maybe 2019. Also offered a 490, 498 combo as a standard pickup. And not to mention the Les Paul Custom for about the same time frame has and still continues to even at its $5,500 price point, come packed up with $490, $498 pickup set. I think if nothing else, that alone is a testament to the versatility of these pickups, that Gibson still puts this in one of its flagship guitars to this day and has been for quite some time. I think that really says a lot about the usability and the balance of the 490 and 498 pickups. Now also on offer, you still get the 490, 498 pickups in a couple of different guitars to this day. Like I mentioned before, the Les Paul Studio, the new Studio Modern has that as well. Also, the new Modern Light Les Paul still comes packed with 490 and 498 pickups. Those pickups still ride on to this day proudly in some pretty cool guitars. And getting even a little crazier than that, you can start getting into the 496R 500T set. Those are ceramic magnet pickups. The 496R is essentially a 490T, but with a ceramic magnet. So it's got a very scooped mid on clean in the neck. It almost has a single coil-ish sound to it, but it's another one that starts to display its affinity for frequencies as you turn the gain up. The same could apply for the 500. I don't believe that that shares any design with anything else. If it does, please let me know. I would love to know that for sure. But the 500T is again a ceramic magnet pickup, high output, and accepts gain very well. So if you want to play really, really hard stuff, really, really heavy stuff, the Dirty Fingers, the 496 500 combo, great pickups for that. Scooped mids, really bright. The bass sort of swells up as you add gain to it. Really just a beautiful sound if that sound is your beautiful sound. And the difference you can tell visually between both. If you're not sure if you're looking at a Dirty Fingers or a 500T, just remember the Dirty Fingers has 2 rows of adjustable pole pieces. The 500T has 1, which also means you can throw a cover on it if you want sort of a more classic look in a higher gain package. Those pickups are typically found in guitars like, you know, your 90s, all the way through the 2000s, 2010s, Explorers, Flying Vs, things that are sort of geared toward heavier music. But I think it's probably this day and age most prominently known as being the pickup set that somehow landed in the Les Paul Classic from, you know, 89, 90 all the way up to probably 2012 or 13. And somehow that pickup combination actually really, really worked over the years. That set of pickups also landed its way into the Jimmy Page standard from the 90s. And I'm not sure how that happened. But again, if nothing else, it's a testament to their usability to be able to find those in guitars that you don't typically associate with extremely heavy music and that sort of thing. And finally, last but not least, in our humbucker rundown from Gibson today is going to be from the Historic Collection. The Historic Collection right now, I do see that it will probably expand over time, but right now it basically consists of the Custombucker, which is sort of this holy grail sound recreated by Gibson with very specific, detailed scans of old pickups, the winds. Although it's interesting, it does use an Alnico 3 magnet, so I'm not sure exactly what the rest of the construction is, if the wind makes up for that, because an Alnico 3 is actually a lower output than an Alnico 2. How that is, I'm not sure, but there we are. But anyway, it uses an Alnico 3 magnet. Typically, you can only find these as far as factory guitars. You're going to find these in custom shop models. So you're going to find these in the Custom Shop 61, 64 SG reissues. You're going to find these in, you know, the R7, R8, R9, R0, so the 57, 58, 59, and 60. Les Paul reissues, that's where you're going to typically find the Custombuckers. You can also get that through the made-to-measure program in any guitar that you want, of course. And now you can also buy them as a set. They're $4.99 for a set of Custombuckers, if that gives you an idea of the sort of tier that these pickups sit on when it comes to their place sort of in the market. This is a pickup designed to compete with boutique pickup makers, guys that are doing the sort of hand-wound things or things of that nature. And it competes really well. I've actually had a couple of guitars now that had Custombuckers in it. You can actually find those too in the Epiphone 59 Les Paul, the new current model with that sort of Gibson open book headstock. They're very balanced. They seem to accept about any genre that you throw at them effortlessly. Now, that's not to say that they're better or worse than any other pickup we've talked about here. These pickups all have their place with your style. and maybe not a place with someone else's style. So even though they're more expensive, I think it's just because they've paid a little bit more attention to detail with, you know, taking some time with scanning, with materials, and that sort of thing that sort of elevates this pickup up into that boutique price level. So I hope this was informative for you guys, gang. I know I certainly learned quite a bit. Even being a Gibson pickup nerd, a Gibson nerd in general, I seem to learn quite a bit myself going through and looking at these pickups on offer from Gibson. If you happen to like the video, or heck, even if you don't, give us a like and a subscribe, and check out more MME content. There's gonna be more on the way, and we'll keep it coming and keep it rolling. Check us out on mountainmusicexchange.com. Also check out that new arrival section. If you see it on our website, we have it in stock. Also check us out on Facebook, check us out on Instagram, of course here on YouTube and on TikTok. Gang, that's gonna have us on this one. This has been the Gibson Pickup Rundown. I'm Clay, you rock. Have a good one, gang.